But in my opinion, I think that JT Miller is one of the, you know, easy candidates, I think, of the new team to have a spot. You look at every game he's played, and I think that his physical game, the way he carries himself on and off the ice, I think that from a few years ago he's a lot more mature. And Rangers fans and fans alike are looking for the same JT Miller you saw in the World Junior Championship, where he had those 7 points in 6-game outbursts. He's had those clutch games, especially when he won it in 2013, where Jacob Trouba and Seth Jones and all those great players were there too. But JT Miller was kind of, an underrated player in that tournament, where he's been there a few times, and he does have the offensive skill to, really contribute. So I think JT Miller's an easy candidate to make this team, without a doubt. And then you have Marty St. Louis. It's like except for Nash, this is like the midget line. You have JT Miller, who's a little bit of a small guy. He's like 5'10", 5'9". 5'10's not that small. But then you have Marty St. Louis, who's like 5'7", 5'8", around that. And then, people are dissing Marty St. Louis regarding his age. And to be honest, 30, 39, late 30s, and in hockey years, that's like 80. That's like pretty old. But I think that he's going to have just as a productive season. 30 or 40 is the new 28. So if you're to, you shouldn't diss Marty St. Louis on different accounts. Marty St. Louis, he still had a 30-goal season last year at 38. I think a lot of people forget that because he struggled so much with the Rangers. The only regular season game he had, the only regular season goal he had last year was against Vancouver in the final 5 games. So I think that Marty St. Louis, JT Miller, Rick Nash, I think they're going to be fine this season. I think they're going to be playing to their full potential. Third line, Anthony Duclair, Chris Mueller, and Ryan Haggerty. We talked about Anthony Duclair, 50 goals last year in the Quebec Major Junior League, 116 points in 118 games. Anthony Duclair can play. He can puck. How people say in basketball you can ball? He can puck. He can puck. So he's a good player that is definitely the Rangers scouts have their eye on. If he does go back to juniors, look at it this way. It's a win-win. Say he does make the Rangers team, and say, you're not looking at a 50-goal season. He's not going to score 50 goals in his first season. But if you look at it this way, he could kind of be like a Chris Kreider situation where, remember, he came in the playoffs in 2012, performed exceptionally well, did fantastic. And then he was sent down to Hartford for a little bit, sent back up. Little by little, baby steps, earned his way into an NHL contract and a position and a spot on the team. Having said that, that was with a defensive-minded John Tortorella team. But I think Anthony Duclair could be a very solid second, third liner. Could contribute a lot on offense. But if he goes back to juniors, he develops, he gets stronger, he gets more offensive ability. Look at it kind of like a Jonathan Drouin thing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. You looked at him last year; he was the best player at that camp, just going around people, pulling off crazy moves. Was easily one of their most skilled prospects in that preseason training camp. So if Anthony Duclair, if he goes back to juniors, it's not a bad thing. Don't shake your head. It's not a bad thing. Chris Mueller, could fit in as a fourth, third line guy. Seems to me he'll probably him and Marek Krivik will probably go back down to the Wolfpack. Next season. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing. But it's more just a matter of, you just got to develop. And you have to have those storage guys that you can kind of, come back up for, especially if you look at Derek Stepan, where we'll get to that in a second, but Derek Stepan with a broken fibula, kind of puts things into perspective about how are they going to fill in that spot where Derek Stepan, if he's playing his absolute best, can get you 70 points in a season. So, I think it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be Duclair, Mueller, and then Ryan Haggerty. Went to RPI, D1 school, was one of the most looked at college players, and one of the most talented. Guy has a shot. He could skate. Played very, very well in his 2 preseason games he's played. So he might also make this team. If he doesn't, then he continues to grow in Hartford, in the AHL affiliate with the Rangers. Wouldn't be the worst thing for him. I really can't see him making this team, but I could see him coming up every once in a while. He played a little bit last year. Really kind of stood out. I liked him. I liked the way he played. And then on the fourth line, you have Tanner Glass, who's I think is going to make this team. He adds a little bit of spice, a little bit of rambunctiousness to the squad, a little bit of you know what I mean? And then you have Kevin Hayes and Jesper Fast. And Jesper Fast played a little bit in the playoffs last year against the Canadiens. He actually assisted on the Martin St. Louis goal in Game 4. I think he's a great player. I think he could make this team easily. So could Kevin Hayes. And as I was going to say before, Derek Stepan, hurts himself in preseason and training camp, like the first 15 minutes. The Rangers need a good center. A center that can fill in, maybe not reach up to the potential, but make a difference on the ice. You look at Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes had a career year as an Eagle in Boston College. If he's playing his natural center position, he's one of the most dangerous players on the ice. And I'm not the only one saying that. Even from last year, senior year, different NHL scouts, Rangers scouts rather. And you look at it, he's determined to make this team. Where if he was with the Blackhawks, he would probably be the number 5 prospect. So with the Rangers, I think that Kevin Hayes could have a chance to make this team. I'm not saying he will, but there's a definite chance. You shouldn't count him out, without a doubt. And then you have the defensive pairings. And you have McDonough and Kampfer. Not sure about the defensemen at this moment. I think Hunwick will make the team, but I'm really looking at the Stahl-Boyle matchup. I think they're going to flip-flop between, Dan Boyle and with McDonough and Mark Stahl, because it is kind of tough. It is kind of tough looking about how they're all going to match up with each other. I think it was wise to get Dan Boyle with the Rangers. He adds a little bit of offensive ability. He's been in the league for a while. He's played with some real all-stars in the NHL, especially with the Sharks and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I think on the power play, Dan Boyle is a factor in which he can mentor Ryan McDonough, and John Moore, the more offensive, minded, Rangers, how to properly quarterback a power play. And I talked about this last week with Brad Richards. He really, he did a great job, with the power play, but I really think if you have a defenseman who knows how to run it and how to score, and he's been with the San Jose Sharks, who have been one of the best offensive, teams of the decade, especially with Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau. He knows what it takes to win, Dan Boyle. So I think it is good to see him. And then you have Matt Hunwick and Dylan McElrath. And Dylan McElrath in Chicago got a huge, big fight. He's been looked at as more of an intimidation kind of guy. I remember when he was drafted, I wasn't the biggest fan, especially when you had Cam Fowler available. He went to the Ducks, turned out to be a very good, very good pick. But I think that, with a Rangers team that is looking for some toughness in the back end, Dylan McElrath does add a little bit of an intimidation factor. towards the Rangers, especially when it comes to the fighting department and everything. So yeah, don't sleep on him either. He could make this team also. And then you have Henrik Lundqvist starting his third straight preseason game. I'm looking for everything. The sky's the limit for Henrik Lundqvist. In my opinion, I think he's going to be fantastic this year. Especially you look last year, he kind of struggled in kind of the first half of the season. I remember Cam Talbot, they were going on and off, and people were going crazy about Cam Talbot and saying that he was going to be, take Lundqvist's job, and that was not the case. You know that Lundqvist is going to be the head guy until he retires. But Cam Talbot isn't playing this game. It's going to be, I've never heard of this guy, Messianen, I don't know. Something that looks Finnish to me. Like those Finnish people have these ridiculous names. Like Kapanen, like ugh. It's like it's like too many like words going in the middle. It's confusing language. But he's gonna be the backup goaltender. You'll see a little bit of him. And this is the beauty of preseason, folks. It's you get a little entree. It's a little like appetizer sampler at like a party. You can take a little bit of that, look at this, look at that, look at different things. So like I actually have one of my friends back at home. The Islanders lost a preseason game, and he was going berserk and cursing, and same thing with my Rangers friends when they lost to the Devils 5-4 at the Garden. He was cursing, freaking out. He's like, "How do you let Adam Henrique score like that with like that much time? This team's doomed." Blah 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 blah. It's like, bro, listen, it's preseason. Like this isn't like a life-changing game. You're putting different teams, different players out there in different lines who, except for training camp, if you're coming in as a rookie, have really never played together. And I think if you're looking for an experience level where you put these 18-year-old kids out there with 25 to 35-year-olds who are big, strong, fast, know how to play the game, have played hockey all their lives. So just, be happy that, you have preseason, because by the time regular season happens, if your team's losing 2 or 3 games in a row, then you can be angry. Then you can start throwing chairs. Actually, no, don't throw chairs, just be angry. But still, just enjoy it for what it is. And it's preseason, so it's a happy occasion. Finishing off the show, I want to talk about a movie I watched. It was a great movie. It was Miracle. If you ever watched Miracle, Kurt Russell. It's the imitation of the 1980 U.S. Olympic team. They beat the Soviets, and it was still one of my all-time favorite movies. That and Remember the Titans are my 2 favorite sports movies. But it's just, you look at it especially in the fact that it's crazy that a bunch of like 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds from like Minnesota and Massachusetts can muster up enough offensive ability in a span of 3 months or 4 months to beat a Russian hockey team that won the gold medal in 76, 72, 68, and 64. For 4 straight Olympics. That's similar to saying that the U.S. basketball team lost to Team Australia. So I just love that. It's a patriotic movie. Kurt Russell is the man. He's just so cool in that movie. Like everything he does is just awesome. And then it's the importance of coaching. Herb Brooks, and unfortunately, at the end, you see that Herb Brooks never got to see the movie, the original coach, because he was in a brutal car crash right before. So it's a little upsetting, but great movie. I recommend it to anyone who loves hockey. I love sports in general. I watch it with I plan to watch it with my roommates, and they're excited to watch it. So this is all we have on Iona College Center Ice. I'm Patrick McCormack. If you want to follow the show or what I'm going to talk about on the show on my Twitter, it's at Patrick_Datrick. You don't have to follow me. I'm not going to be heard about it, but I'm just going to cry to myself. But really, I do appreciate you guys listening to the show. I'm going to be here next week, Mondays 4 to 5, and we'll be talking about all kinds of different stuff, different preseason games, rules, the upcoming season, different games. So, come with me next week. We'll talk about different stuff. I'll see you guys later, all right?